Aviva Life Insurance, Kal par control.
Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. As the BJP prepares for its national executive on Thursday, how does it face up to the fact that national opinion polls are showing that its popularity is sharply falling? That's the key question I shall put today to the party's General Secretary and National Spokesperson, Arun Jaitley. Mr. Jaitley, two national opinion polls within a space of 2 weeks showing that even 27 months after the national elections, at a time when you should be benefiting from the anti-incumbency of the government, the Congress is in fact soaring in the polls, the BJP is sharply falling. Do you concede that you have a problem?
Well, I am one of those who never rubbishes the polls. The polls may not be accurate. The polls, at a time when there is no election in the offing, may not give you an accurate trend, but the polls are always indicative. And both the polls which I have seen have broadly indicated that there is a 4, 5, 6% voting difference between the UPA and the NDA, with the NDA trailing behind. But I have broadly two reactions to these polls. The first, of course, I concede that there is a gap, and a gap is in favor of the UPA. At the same time, there's an interesting paradox that the polls present. When individual questions are asked about issues, and whether they have a comfort level or satisfaction with regard to the performance of the government, barring an issue of handling of foreign policy, where normally the government of the day gets the benefit of doubt, on every other issue, people are completely dissatisfied with the government.
Only if you go by the CNN-IBN poll, but if you turn, in fact, to the India Today poll, it shows that in fact today more people think that Congress is better able to handle the problems of the country, it's more concerned about poverty, and it's more secure in terms of giving a stable government. In other words, on all those three critical issues, people have lost faith in the BJP as a party of governance.
Let me respond to all these 2-3 issues that you raise. One, let's see the handling of the economy. The handling of the economy has been disastrous. The government is caught in contradictions between the left and the UPA policies. No new policy initiatives are coming. The economy is on a roll at times with an 8% growth rate, essentially because it's entrepreneur driven. Two, let's see the handling of the security situation. If not collapsing, it's crumbling. Let us see the ability to take decisions and enforce them. It's a disastrous situation.
Granted, but you're not benefiting from these problems. This is the real thing. Let me just finish this. If, despite the problems that you're accurately pointing out, CNN-IBN says that if a poll were to be held today, Congress would increase its tally by almost 100 seats. The BJP would go down to 82, your worst performance in 17 years.
Well, let me tell you, I don't go by these figures, but let's keep the controversy of the figures apart, whether it's how much plus minus it is. The two indications which are coming, the broad two indications, there is a large-scale dissatisfaction with the handling of the governance as far as the UPA is concerned.
Quite right, but the BJP is not benefiting.
And yet, you have a situation where the UPA may increase in terms of seats. Now, it possibly could be that people feel in midterm that the government must be given a chance, or people feel that some of the issues or the kind of issues that have arisen with us at the time of the poll, really we haven't focused enough on the issues we should have been focused.
Can I interrupt? Actually, the political logic in most countries is the other way around. Midterm is when a government is at its lowest point in terms of its popularity, perhaps even its credibility. Midterm is when an opposition actually begins not just to challenge, but to surge ahead in the polls.
Psephology is a strange paradox.
No, not psephology. In any country in the world.
Psephology is a strange paradox. In 2003, and right till January 2004, all polls indicated an NDA landslide. And the results 5 months later indicated something different. Therefore, when the polls are held, people start focusing on the issues, they look for actual results. You can't have a result where inflation is sky high, prices of essential commodities are going up, the security apparatus is crumbling, and people will be happy with the government.
But this is exactly the odd scenario that creates the problem for you. The government faces all the critical problems you mentioned, and no one denies it. But rather than the BJP benefiting from it, rather than the BJP showing that suddenly it's positioning itself as a party for the future of this country at the next elections, you are being smashed in the polls, and the government, despite its problems, is soaring.
We have to learn the lesson from this poll. And I am, as a BJP member and an activist, I have no hesitation in admitting that the lesson for us from this poll is people are dissatisfied with the government. Why should they not be leaning towards us? And in case they are to
What's the answer to that question?
Yeah, therefore, in case they are to lean towards us, we as the opposition have a primary responsibility, one, of focusing on the issues on which people are dissatisfied. Therefore, our intensity on the mismanagement of the economy, the farmers issue, the price rise issue, the security scenario, the weak leadership of the UPA, the contradictions within the UPA, we have to highlight that as an effective opposition.
But you're not.
Rather than every third day allow some irrelevant controversy within us to surface, which diverts popular opinion from the UPA failure.
And you accept, don't you, by that answer, that rather than concentrate on the problems of the government and actually expose them, you have fallen into the trap of allowing irrelevant controversies to sidetrack and distract you?
No. Some of the issues which we have raised,
just said it.
Yes, yes. Some of the issues which we have raised are very vital. But when we have somebody giving a dissident noise within the party, we had this problem in 2004, 2005, we've tried to correct that discipline. Now, today we have to really concentrate on all the issues on which the polls have indicated that there is a UPA failure. And if we concentrate on that...
And where you're not concentrating at the moment.
Well, I won't say we are not concentrating. I would not say that we are not concentrating.
You're not concentrating effectively enough.
No. We have not only to concentrate on these issues, we have to concentrate exclusively on these issues rather than...
not get sidetracked.
Not get sidetracked so the agenda doesn't have to get diverted.
Very well. We've moved quite happily from talking about the poll results, which I described as a disaster. You tried to defend, naturally, your General Secretary of the party, you have to defend yourself, into talking now about what is the underlying problem. Let's pause a moment and talk about it a little differently. Let me start by saying to you that the first problem that BJP faces is that today, you do not have a single and undisputed leader who can challenge the Prime Minister and at the same time become a focal point of attention for the BJP in the press. Do you accept that it's the absence of clear-cut leadership that's blunting your edge?
No, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's a problem. And to answer that question, you'll have to allow me some time to explain to you why BJP would be a little different from the other political parties in the country which are emerging. Most political parties, and I won't go into details, barring the left, are essentially either family-driven or personality-driven, and some of them have a caste support base. Their succession lines are on basis of families. Most political parties in this country. The BJP, on the other hand, is a more structured political party.
But you still don't have a succession line, and that's the problem.
No, the BJP is going through a process. We've had two senior leaders, Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Advani,
who will not leave and are clinging on to the detriment of succession.
Let's not get into the abstract issue of who will lead, who will not lead. And today we have a situation where a generational change has been encouraged by these two in the party.
But it's not happening. That's the problem.
It's current. At one layer it has happened. And I'll tell you the layer where it has happened. Most of our chief ministers are either in their mid-50s or early 50s.
But none of your national leaders at the top have actually succeeded at that age.
Our chief ministers are also our important national leaders. Most of our party functionaries, amongst our president, our general secretaries, and other senior leaders are in the same age group. So, on the contrary, instead of allowing a family member to come up as other political parties have, what these two have consciously done is to have encouraged a whole galaxy of a second-generation leadership. And let me tell you,
can I interrupt
politics...
you there? I gave you a long time to answer the question because it's only fair, since I was accusing the party of not having an effective leader, that you should answer it effectively. Let me now point out the real problem. Today, the India Today opinion polls suggest that the man who is perhaps the most popular choice to be Prime Minister of the country is Atal Bihari Vajpayee. In 2009, he'll be 84 and far too old, and there is no one else available. That's your problem.
I don't think that really is a problem. Prior to 2004,
it is.
Prior to 2004, let me just give you two examples. Unlike the Congress, where the leadership belongs to a family.
No, don't go to the Congress. Talk about yourself.
Let's talk of others. Prior to 2004, did any poll give Dr. Manmohan Singh a ghost of a chance? Prior to 1996, did any poll give Mr. Gujaral or Mr. Devgowda a ghost of a chance?
But look at where Mr. Advani, who has been Home Minister, who's been Deputy Prime Minister, comes
in a given...
1.9% of the country, according to CNN-IBN, believe he'll make a fitting Prime Minister. He's lower than Mayawati, he's lower than Mulayam Singh, he's lower than Rahul Gandhi.
In 2004, if you had sought a poll, perhaps the present Prime Minister would have got a 0.9 rating. But that doesn't really answer the question.
But the present Prime Minister wasn't in that moment of time considered a successor. L.K. Advani is your only possibility of successor.
In a structured political party, going through a generational change, where the senior leaders are consciously encouraging a new generation.
They are not. That's the problem. If they were, the whole situation would be different.
The problem is not with the BJP. The problem is with a particular mindset in this case, where people expect one person, perhaps on basis of a family succession, he'll be the clear successor. We know who Mrs. Sonia Gandhi's successor will be.
No, you're deflecting the issue. Let's not talk about Congress. Come back to you.
We know in various political parties across the country who successors would be.
Jaitley,
most of them would be from families.
You're a very effective lawyer and a brilliant national spokesperson.
Therefore,
who's deftly avoiding my question. Let me reiterate it.
I cannot give an answer that we'll have somebody on basis of family.
No.
All I can say is our leadership, a galaxy of it is emerging, and one of them will be the first amongst equals.
One of them inevitably and eventually through sheer default will have to emerge as a leader, or the party will fall away. But let me point out the problem.
In a structured party, it doesn't happen by default.
Let me finish.
It happens by conscious choice.
It's not happening by choice at the moment. That's the problem. Let me tell you the real problem. Any party of governance that's lost an election can only bounce back at the next polls if it can throw up a leader who captures the imagination of the country who has the capacity to reform and change the party. Tony Blair did it, Margaret Thatcher did it, David Cameron is trying to do it in Britain today. No one in the BJP is in that position today. That's the critical problem of leadership you face.
I don't think it would be a fair comparison between the two countries to make. You have a huge federal polity. You have the third, fourth and the eighth party in this country which have an effective balancer's role in deciding who comes to power. You have structured political parties which need not be.
I'm talking about the leadership of a single party.
You are governed by a mindset which thinks that the party will be entirely leader-driven. A party can be organizational-driven. A party can have a galaxy of leadership. One of them will become. After all, when Mr. Blair became the leader.
And there's another alternative. A party can survive without an effective leader, gently but steadily sink in the polls, and that's the problem. Let's take a break. I want to come back and address the second set of issues you raised. Is your real problem not just the absence of a clear, effective leader, but also the fact that you failed to embarrass the government despite the juicy opportunities that came your way. We'll be back in a moment's time. Don't go away.
The South Indian Bank, a bank for all seasons.
But sir...
Shut up! Yes, I would like to book a table for two.
Sure, sir.
Poolside.
Your name, sir?
Hari Sadu.
What, sir?
Hari Sadu.
Sir, may I? Write down Hari Sadu. H for Hitler, A for arrogant, R for rascal, I for idiot. That's right.
You're gonna love this.
A rough, dusty Indian road.
A helicopter lands.
The lovely girl. She runs to the new fusion. She's being chased, zigzagging through the traffic.
I love it. Just drop the girl and the chopper. Keep the fusion and the road. Just drop all the nonsense.
New Ford Fusion, the no-nonsense car.
Elegant, efficient, organized, successful. World-class files, folders and stationery. Solo.
For the first time in India, Hero Honda presents the technology that drives new age cars in motorcycles. Microprocessor-based programmed fuel injection, PGMFI. All-weather instant start. Real-time mileage indicator. Glamour PGMFI. Surprisingly smooth to drive. Glamour PGMFI. Drive the difference.
किसान टमाटो केचप आओ बनाए बर्गर बेहतर किसान टमाटो केचप आओ बनाए चिप्स बेहतर
How does Malvinder Singh plan to transform Ranbaxy into a $5 billion global drugs giant by 2012? What's hurting India's small and medium enterprises? Find out in the latest issue of Business Today, India's #1 business magazine. Business Today for Managing Tomorrow.
Tanishq Everydays, starting at ₹5,000.
The new Galaxy Paint Kit. Join me on a Star Trek. With every new Galaxy Paint Kit, get a free glow ball.
IDBI offers Suvidha Plus. Earn 8.25% interest per annum for 500 days and 8.75% per annum for senior citizens. SMS Plus to 3636.
IDBI Bank. Aao, soche bada.
The new Safari range starts at 6.4 lakhs. It takes little to reclaim your life.
Hello. Hi.
W700i Walkman phone with mega bass. It's like hearing it live. Sony Ericsson.
You're watching CNN-IBN.
Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an exclusive interview with BJP General Secretary Arun Jaitley. Arun Jaitley, we're talking about why the BJP's poll ratings are so poor. In part one, I argued that, in fact, one of the problems was the absence of a popular, charismatic leader. The second problem is that you failed to embarrass the government despite the opportunities that have come your way. For example, during the monsoon session of Parliament, the whole Jaswant Singh episode damaged the credibility of your leader in the Rajya Sabha. It dented your party stand on national security. It made a mockery of your whole Bharat Suraksha Yatra. Do you accept that this sort of issue has actually cost the BJP opportunities?
Well, a lot of Indian politics today is dictated day to day by what news channels think is the agenda for the day. Mr. Jaswant Singh has come with a book which is a serious publication. Now, in the book, he's highlighted various factors. The media unfortunately picked up one issue and the issue dragged on for a couple of days. I do concede the dragging of the issue really did not help us. That was neither the core of the BJP stand nor the core of his book. But unfortunately, that did happen. And to that extent, the agenda from those weaknesses of the government during that period got marginally diverted.
In fact, if I recall correctly, at one of your press conferences before the monsoon session began, you said that the BJP would concentrate primarily on exposing the Prime Minister's weakness of leadership, on exposing problems of inflation, and exposing problems of national security, and in particular terror. Jaswant Singh so deflected you that those attacks that could have embarrassed the government never got made, and the government
escaped. Each one of those issues has been raised and raised very effectively in Parliament. You've had a debate on Bombay blast. Now, you can't have 5 debates on the Bombay blast.
But the government was never on the mat. You could have had the government on the mat.
I think on the security scenario and on the prices issue, the farmer suicide issues, which has been raised in the 1 month at least twice by us in Parliament, the government had a lot to answer, which it did not answer.
Right. But the expectation of embarrassment that you had both within yourselves and that you aroused in the press never materialized.
I think, Karan, a little bit of this is also attributable to a fact that a debate like farmer suicide, a debate like price rise, a debate like the Bombay blast doesn't find the same amount of coverage in the media, which, let us say, an issue like the mole could.
All right.
And that's also the character we have to learn to live with.
Maybe you're right.
And one of the lessons is that we must concentrate on these issues and not allow those issues to occupy the center
Let's
stage.
take another issue where, in fact, you got yourselves deflected. The Natwar Singh episode. Rather than stand up for accountability, transparency, and take a clear line on the issue of corruption, L.K. Advani declared Natwar Singh to be a scapegoat. Yashwant Sinha and Shatrughan Sinha went out of their way to befriend the man, making a complete mockery of your original position.
I think there was a little confusion unnecessarily created on that issue. Even when Mr. Advani made a statement, he didn't defend Mr. Natwar Singh. He said that the Congress part of it should have been investigated. It's only in that context that he used that expression.
When you call a man a scapegoat, you are finding a form of defense.
Thereafter, the party's position was clarified after a complete discussion when I addressed the media, and I categorically said that this is half an inquiry and half a cover-up. Well, and that was clearly the BJP stand.
Let me quote to you from your own letter of the 3rd of November to the Prime Minister. Your defense of an errant colleague has tarnished tarnished the quality of our democracy. Shri Natwar Singh today stands tainted and compromised. His credentials will always be suspect. How come Yashwant Sinha, Shatrughan Sinha, and even L.K. Advani forgot that?
Not on the
They
Volcker
no longer
issue.
thought of Natwar Singh as suspect.
I am afraid on the Volcker issue that continues to remain the stand of the BJP. Because Mr. Yashwant Sinha, on behalf of the party, was handling the nuclear issue, and therefore he was speaking to people who could support the BJP stand on the nuclear issue.
You know what you said to the Prime Minister? I appeal to you to rise above petty party political interests. Arguably, the Prime Minister did. Yashwant Sinha, Shatrughan Sinha reduced this to an issue of simple point scoring.
Admittedly, the Prime Minister did not. The Prime Minister continued him in the government. The Prime Minister has still not allowed a proper criminal investigation to find out the movement of the monies as far as Volcker is concerned.
From the day the Pathak report came out, Yashwant Sinha, Shatrughan Sinha, and possibly L.K. Advani. They reduced an issue of corruption to a matter of scoring
The
points.
Volcker issue was raised by the BJP. I, in particular, had raised it, and our party's stand has been always clear as far as this issue is concerned. Please don't confuse this issue with Mr. Yashwant Sinha taking up the nuclear issue and seeking support from people who would support him on the nuclear issue.
Let's take up the nuclear issue. You brought it up twice. You were, in fact, the architects of the original change in the relationship with Washington. You wanted a deal like this. Instead of offering constructive support, you've metamorphosed into the most strident critics. This reversal of position shows to people that the BJP is neither consistent in its beliefs, nor does it stick by its...
Let's not get into responses only in the nature of sound bites. Let's look at the essence of the issue. Even though we wanted a proper deal with the United States, our deal envisaged A, India's independent foreign policy not to be compromised with, B, India's options and choices not to be restricted. And when in the final document, as also in the discussions which have been going on in the United States, our party felt this was being done, Mr. Yashwant Sinha and Mr. Arun Shourie in the parliament very effectively raised this issue.
Effectively? Let me tell you where you ended up today. By raising an issue of opposition for opposition's sake, you are in the company of the Samajwadi Party and the Communists, both of whom have a visceral hatred of the United States because of its stand on terror and its commitment to a free market. Issues where you side with Washington.
I think we disagree as far as the left and the Samajwadi Party is concerned on their attitude as far as the issues may be concerned.
You made common cause.
No. Our approach has been guided essentially by India's nationalist considerations. Theirs may have been guided by the traditional...
Yashwant Sinha looked as if he was a puppet for, in fact, Amar Singh or Sitaram Yechuri. That was the extent to which the BJP's image was affected.
Those who heard Mr. Yashwant Sinha and Mr. Arun Shourie's speeches in Parliament will not share the perception that you are making.
Finally, today, again, simply to score points at the cost of the government, you mandated that all schools in BJP-ruled states have to sing in a compulsory fashion Vande Mataram on the 7th of September, completely forgetting that in 1998, when Kalyan Singh tried to do the same thing, L.K. Advani and Atal Bihari Vajpayee disagreed with the decision. The decision was revoked, and Ravindra Shukla, the education minister responsible, was sacked.
Let's be very clear as to what the background of the issue is. Today, it is the UPA government which first decided that 7th September would be the centenary of the issue.
I don't have time for the background. I'm simply asking you, why are you reversing your position?
We are not reversing our position. We are opposed to any form of disrespect to a symbol of India's national honor.
But this is the interesting thing. Even on the issue of what you actually are standing for, your own individuals are contradicting each other.
Well, I think
Can I finish? Purushottam Rupala says that it won't be compulsory in madrasas. So does V.K. Malhotra, but Ghanshyam Tiwari says it will be.
Well, I think...
Rajnath Singh says the singing is compulsory. L.K. Advani says he's only concerned about no disrespect.
I think hair splitting is not what is required. This is a hair splitting. Hair splitting is not what is required. The broad issue is that the BJP will not accept any disrespect to a symbol of national honor. The others are willing to come under pressure from certain fundamentalist groups.
Let me put it like this. On all the 4 issues that I've discussed with you, Jaswant Singh, Natwar Singh, Vande Mataram and the nuclear deal, you sought to embarrass the government. You've ended up embarrassing yourself. That's why you're sinking in the polls.
I think on all the issues, whether it is our stand on Volcker or it's our stand on the nuclear deal or it's our stand on the Vande Mataram, a very large section of national opinion is going to support us.
Well, so you hope, but the polls suggest otherwise. Mr. Jaitley, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.